How could the vice president earlier in the administration argue he didn't have to turn over records about the Energy Task Force, for example, because he was a member of the executive branch?
Well, you could ask the Supreme Court, who ruled in his favor.
But he did not say I'm a member of the legislative branch as well, so I don't have to. I mean, he clearly stated that there was strong executive power and he didn't have to turn over these records. Now, when it suits his interests, he seems to be saying a different legal argument.
No, look, I'm not a legal scholar, and there's plenty of them that you can find in Washington, D.C., but just that very point that you're making there shows that he has functions in both the executive branch and the legislative branch.
He didn't mention those functions, both dual functions, in the earlier legal arguments at the beginning of the administration. He's only used the executive branch arguments.
Look, you can try to call his office and try to get more information. I'm not opining on his argument. In the executive order, the president and the vice president are discharged separately from agencies, in which it would be awkward if the president who is the supervisor of this office, was asking that office to come in and investigate himself. And in this executive order, the president is saying that the vice president is not different than him.
When did he decide that? Just in 2003? I mean, he
in terms of the executive order, I need to go back.
For a couple of years before that. He just
right.
was doing that out of the good of his heart, or?
I think so.
Just lastly, it's a little surreal. I mean, how is it possible that
You're telling me?
That you can't give an opinion about whether the vice president is part of the executive branch or not?
Look, all I know is that
it's a little bit like someone saying, "I don't know if this is my wife or not."
I think it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Well, no, but honestly, I mean, there's no.
No, honestly, I think it's more complicated than that. I do.
But Dana, one difference is from this podium came the explanation that the president never intended for this to apply to the vice president. When there was communication from the counsel of the vice president's office to ISO, the rationale was different. It was that there was a split in the duties, the role of the vice president, and that's where we're getting this, he's part of the legislative and the executive. So it seems that everybody wasn't on the same page when they were first responding to the National Archives.
I don't know that to necessarily be true, but I can see if I can get from the vice president's office more of an explanation, because they could have been thinking of one and the same argument, and I don't have the legal mind that can draw those two together.
For 200 plus years, everybody from civics class on up has had a certain understanding of the way our government works. And this EO clarifies more than 200 years of constitutional scholarship about the way our system works.
I think that maybe it's me, but I think that everyone's making this a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. The president writes an executive order. He says to agencies...
The part where the vice president says that there's a question about whether or not he's part of the executive order.
And the point I was trying to make for you before is that I think that for the past 2 centuries, the Senate has provided payment to the vice president for his duties as a member of the government. And I'm just saying that he has roles in both branches. I don't think that it's as clear-cut as you're trying to make it.
The vice president of the United States is...
He has function. I think that there's no denying that he has functions in both the legislative and the executive branches. That is a fact.
But it seems like the vice president is saying he's not responsible for the rules of either of those.
Yeah.
No, I think that he's saying, especially when it comes to the executive branch, is that the duties that he's given are given to him solely by the president of the United States, and some vice presidents don't do as much as he does in the realm of national security or in policy development as this vice president does. But this vice president was given executive duties to handle.
How is being a part of another branch, I guess it's debatable, but how is that an out?
It's not. That's irrelevant, because the president never intended for the vice president to be subject to the executive order.
The office of the vice president introduces that into the argument, into the debate. Well, we're not part of the executive branch.
I think that is also a fact. And as I said to Kelly, I'll see if I can get more from the vice president's office to see how they connected the two, or if they didn't.
He can argue he's part of both, but he can't possibly argue that he's part of neither. And it seems like he's saying he's part of neither.
Okay,
you don't have an opinion on that?
You have me thoroughly confused.